My episode today will be geared for beginners who collect 1A1 and 1A2 key telephone units and the telephone sets. I will briefly discuss some of the units and their functions. I have plenty of videos that go into better detail, and that's not my scope today. I am showing off a section of my key system to show you how large systems were built back in the 60s, 70s, 80s. I will be focusing on a 551 KSU and will show detailed parts of what's inside of it. One of the most common key service units that appear on eBay is the Western Electric 551 series. This particular gray box is a 551B, and there is a difference between the A, the B, and the C. The A has a special twist lock power connector that's mounted on the bottom of the control unit, and you need the proper cord to plug into it, and those are difficult to find. However, you can just cut the end off and put an aftermarket 3-prong plug on the end of the power cord and you'll be in business. It'll become, at that point, kind of a B series. There's a C series that was plastic, and I will show one of those later in the video. I'll discuss some of the individual components within the control unit and what they do, and then this is common for pretty much any 1A2 system, regardless of who manufactured it or the model number. The only exception is the ITT 601A used the solid state interrupter and a different type of a power supply that was only used in the 601. I'll show the power supply in the 551 series, and I will show the ringing generator, which is generally hard to get, and I will show a ringing generator bracket that would actually be used for this KSU. We're looking at the power supply in the 400 type KTU. The power supply in this case is a 28A1. And they made 3 or 4 different generations of these. The one for the A series KSU would have 2 power line fuses, one for the neutral and one for the 120 volt line current. The neutral fuses are no longer legal to interrupt a neutral line, so they got away from that many, many years ago. This unit does not provide ringing. The only thing this power supply does is provide negative 24 volt DC talk battery, which in the case of this system, if you use the manual 401 intercom, you need filtered battery. And since this is a very small power unit, they just filtered all of the battery in it so that the 24 volts can be used to operate the line cards or intercom that would be clean, smooth power. It has a 10 volt AC tap and an 18 volt AC tap. Even though the power supply is marked signal, which is 24 volts and then 20 volts DC, they're both the same tap on the transformer internally. These power supplies almost never fail. There is one diode in them that can fail. I've only seen a couple in my lifetime that ever failed. They're pretty bulletproof. The brown vertical things between the screws are fuses. These are called a type 24 flat fuse. With all of the Bell system fuses, they had fuses that would be, for an example, 24A, 24B, 24C, and so forth. And the letter after the number determined the amperage of the fuse, the number would tell you the type of a fuse. In this case, these are 24 type. In other cases, there are 70 type fuses. Of course, the power line fuse is a standard ACG half amp fuse, which is an automotive type fuse. I will show the interrupter, which is also a major component, which is used to interrupt this ringing lead and the lamp flash and lamp wink on the key system. There is a 66 block mounted recessed inside of the cabinet. That 66 block is where the wiring to the telephone sets are connected, as well as the incoming dial tone lines and some of the options and power taps to connect to auxiliary equipment. Down at the bottom, there is a white thing that is not supposed to be white. That is the interrupter. This particular interrupter type of a plastic is notorious for turning white because of some type of a mold material. It's not hard to get it off. It is safe to take it off. There are 2 screws that holds the plastic cover on, and you remove them 2 screws and you can put the unit, the plastic that is, in a very, very mild bleach water or something like that, and let it sit, preferably overnight, and generally the mold stuff will wipe off. For those who are afraid of touching anything, I would recommend using gloves. I will show an interrupter that has not yet got the mold on it, so you can see what they should look like. One other thing that can happen, and there's other videos that I've produced about this, the 400 series line card, depending on the age, they relays on the circuit card. There is a sealed relay, one, that is the loop relay. It was potted in some type of a compound that is now turning to liquid. And during the summertime or in warm environments, the green goo will begin to leak out of that relay and will get on anything and everything below it. The green goo is an incredibly annoying heartache that's plaguing everybody that has Western Electric equipment with sealed relays. You can use WD-40 to break down the goo because it would turn into a fairly solid mass. The WD-40 will soak into it and make it like a bubble gum type of a mass that then can be dealt with. I do recommend, if you want, to use like a wood chisel to scrape it off of things, and probably gloves. It does not impact the operation of the line card. It's just an annoyance. A quick shot of some of the 400 type KTUs that can be found in the 1A2 world. There are 3 items laying here on the workbench. This is a nice clean interrupter that would work inside of that KSU. Western Electric did not manufacture their own interrupters like this with key systems. This was made by Hayden Controls, ITT, Automatic Electric, Stromberg Carlson, and Western Electric all used these very same interrupters. They're interchangeable with one another. There is larger interrupters for a different type of panel, and I'll show that momentarily. Here is the difficult to find Western Electric 118 frequency generator that produces 105 volts at 30 cycles for ringing the ringers. This particular one, somebody had decided to, instead of unplugging it, they cut the end off. So that's an aftermarket end. This unit cannot be used any longer in a 551 because the ones that were made for it had a male-female with the cord coming out the side that would plug in line with the power supply. but at least this can still be used for other things, and this was the only loose one I had for the video. Here's the mounting bracket that mounts in, that this unit connects to, and then this mounts inside the 551. You loosen the screw that's on that holds the line card cage in. You mount the power supply here on it somehow, and then you have the, let's ask backwards. So it would sit inside the KSU like this, right above the interrupter. Mounted, the generator mounted to the ringing bracket, and then this is mounted in. You loosen up the screw and slide this in behind the aluminum bracket. So those are items, at least the ringing generator, that will not necessarily come with the key systems. This is a 551C KSU, and it does have the 118 ringing generator in it, and this one has not been cut off. It has the male-female connected plug-in line with the power supply. Again, it has a 28 type power unit on top. This one is plastic and has the cover you can remove, and then the 66 block where you do your wiring to is much smaller. I'm showing a 9-line 1A1 unit. Typically on eBay you will find a 4-line version of this. On the left side is the KTU part that has a very large interrupter compared to the one that's in a 551 KSU, and then it has a mechanical timing relay and a battery feed relay, which was used to provide a talking battery for the manual intercoms if you had manual intercoms on the phone, such as a button and buzzer circuit. Each strip of these relays is one line, and those are what's referred to as wire spring relays, a Bell Labs invention made by Western Electric. Down below is some 400 type key telephone units. Those replaced the 1A1 and went to a modular system, and that could, instead of needing to abandon a line circuit that failed, you would simply replace the line card. 1A1 is all screw terminals on the rear, which is then in some cases wired to a harness that's connected to a 66 block, or the field installer would do the wiring of a cable over to different types of 66 blocks. I'll give you a quick close-up of some of the wiring done on some of my miscellaneous series 1A1 key telephone units. Small section of my backboard that I terminate telephone cables to that are either connected directly to telephones or equipment. There is a multitude of 66 blocks available. The majority of what you're looking at are 66 M150s. However, there are some gray colored blocks here, and I'll zoom in on. Those are 66 M125s, which means there's 4 terminals from left to right. So you wire your equipment onto the left side and your jumpers on the right. 66 M150s are generally used to connect the telephone sets themselves to. If you're connecting up a 551 KSU with 1, 2, 3, or 4 phones, none of this is required. If you want to expand your system, then you will need to have additional connecting blocks, and I will show a multiple block momentarily. The pink boards and the gray connecting blocks is my multiples because I have lots of telephones on the same line. In my case, I'm building this out exactly as the Bell system did, so I have the pink backboards and 66 B425s. So there's one single row that is for the equipment, and then you have 5 appearances of whatever was connected to the first row. These would be required if you wanted to exceed more than 3 or 4 phones in a 551 without having additional connecting blocks, such as what we refer to as cans, where you would run to a cable to another block and then branch out from there, which was done and can be done. That is far in exceeding the scope of this video. Here is a wall can that would typically have a 66B4 block installed in it. This particular can had some ringing isolator modules installed in it, but it's the same physical mounting. They just use this as a convenient place to install some non-protected units. Wall can with the cover on. We have 3 line cards on the workbench. Here is a Stromberg Carlson 400 series line card. This was used primarily by the independent telephone companies. This line card does the same exact functions as a Western Electric 400 series. The ITT 400Ds, 400Es, and so on and so on. They're all interchangeable. If you're using a ATA VoIP adapter, you must have a line card that would ring up on bridged ringing. And the older series Western Electric and some of the ITT line cards were what was used for grounded ringing, where the power supply of the key system was connected to ground, as well as the central office, so you had a complete circuit through the ground. With the ATAs or the X-Link, you do not have that. So the line card will not ring up on an incoming call. If you have a Western Electric issue 15 or later, it will ring up. ITT 400Es will ring up, and the Stromberg card will ring up. And some of the automatic electric 4000 series line cards will ring up. The list is just phenomenal on how many different manufacturers made these cards. So if you have a Western Electric card that is issue 14 or earlier, unless you're using a real legitimate phone line, it will not ring up. And your power system, KSU, must be grounded in order to complete the circuit. So I'm just showing this here as a reference. This is an issue 15, and then we have an issue 15 as well. They'll tell you the issue number, 14, 10, 8, etc. So that is important. If you have a Western 400G or a 400H, they will ring up without any problems because they're a later generation card. The only problem with the 400H that I do not care for is it will not allow the call to be placed on hold for about 3 to 4 seconds after going off hook if you're originating a call. Incoming calls, you can immediately put it on hold. This was a feature they did to prevent people from going off hook at lunch hour and putting the phone's lines on hold to busy them out. This way, most people was unsuccessful at accomplishing that. The fuses on the power supply that we spoke about previously will blow if you create a short on the talk battery, the signal, or the lamp. Do not, for any reason, strap out these fuses. They are there for a reason. They are hard to find, but they still do make them to the best of my knowledge. Gray Bar Electric might be a good source. They do come up on eBay from time to time. You'll also need to acquire some 25 pair cable with female Amphenol connectors on the end. Also, it's probably a good idea if you plan on hooking up telephones to actually have some telephones to connect to the system. There's a multitude of telephones made by Western Electric, ITT, Stromberg, and Automatic Electric. These are two Western Electric phones here. There's a wall phone, which is an 851, and then I have a 2565 on the far right corner of my crate. One of the tools that you would need in order to terminate any type of wiring on a 66 block is an impact tool. This particular yellow and blue tool is made by Dracon Harris. Their Ideal makes tools as well as a whole bunch of other ones today here in the 2023s. It has a blade, in this case, that is for this tool. I believe the blades are interchangeable among some of the manufacturers. And these tools appear on eBay, used or new. And this is a must when working with a 66 block, regardless of the type of 66 block. The rest of the tools required are just a standard flat blade screwdriver, and if you're using Phillips screws to mount it to the wall, then you would need that as well. Up at the very top above my 620 panels is a piece of conduit that has a whole bunch of different spools of cross-connect wire. This is for convenience for my system, and it used to be done in the telco days prior to the breakup. So if you're going to have a system that is larger than 4 or 5 phones and you have auxiliary 66 blocks, then you'll need 1 pair, 2 pair, and 3 pair cross-connect wire. Just a quick view of the proper way to run cross-connects on large systems. You never tie your cross-connect down tight where there's no slack, because it's impossible for tracing and troubleshooting. And then of course, in my case, I have a lot of cross connects and hand tracing can be slightly challenging. So if you have a service loop, you can just pull the service loop up and then locate it where it goes on the frame. For this particular key system, I have 58 vertical rows of 4 each 66 blocks. If you're going to be working with Western Electric 1A2 stuff to any degree, I recommend finding and buying the Key System Service Manual Volume Number 1, which has a lot of the common telephones in it, and Volume Number 2 that shows some of the key service units and some of the auxiliary stuff. These are both great to have for working on your system. Some of the other ones that are great to have is the ITT practices. They might be a little simpler for people to read and understand. Here's a quick view of some of the different types of 1A2 phones and colors that I have in my collection. All of the phones you see, with the exception of 2, will be connected to my 1A2 system. This is a external cross-connect area, which is called an IDF, Intermediate Distributing Frame. We have tie cables to the main distributing frame, which was the large frame you've seen in the beginning of this video. This particular IDF has a 6A intercom connected to it and telephone sets, mostly call directors. So this is what satellite terminals would have looked like in the Bell System days. I do have a lot of other videos related to 1A2. So if you explore my channel, I have some of this stuff listed under 1A1, 1A2 systems, as well as a multitude of other videos to discuss switchboards, switching systems, and so forth. I hope you've enjoyed the video. This was just kind of a quick overview of some of the items that would be needed or that you will encounter while working with a 551 KSU. The phone systems do appear on eBay from time to time as complete working systems or just the individual parts. The cable can be found on eBay. Cat3 cable is the only cable you need to connect between the telephone set and the KSU, and those come in various lengths, new and used. If you liked the video, please subscribe and pass this on, and thanks for watching.